Hello there, wandering wanderers. Just a couple of announcements before we dive into this week's episode. I have a lovely American lady called Tracy who is going to be walking the Camino Frances and stopping in Oreson, which is the albergue halfway up the first climb, on September 16th, 2020. So that's September the 16th, 2020. She's looking for a walking buddy. So if you're going to be in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, staying at Oreson the same time, September the 16th, please send a PM to our Facebook page, Camino de Santiago Pilgrims Podcast, and I'll put you in touch with Tracy so you can walk together. The other thing I'd like to mention is, are you a pilgrim that's walked the Camino de Santiago? Could be any of the Caminos. If so, please send us a message on our Pilgrims Podcast Facebook page, because I would love to interview you. I'm always looking for new guests for the podcast, and as a thank you, I will give you a copy of my Camino de Santiago memoir, The Only Way is West. It's a bestseller in the humorous essays and travelogue categories in the UK, in Australia and Canada, and also a bestseller in sports essays, ecotourism and literary travel in the USA. So please get in touch, and like I said, as a thank you, I'll give you a free copy of my book, The Only Way is West, which currently on Amazon has 73 reviews and 4.8 out of 5. So that's the announcements over with. Let's get into the podcast.
A wandering wanderer, a life adventurer, said he's a secrets philosopher. He's a wandering wanderer.
Hello there once again, wandering wanderers. Welcome to episode 30 of El Camino de Santiago Pilgrims Podcast, where we talk about planning, preparation and packing for walking the road to Santiago, as well as tips, tricks and hacks to make your journey on the road to Santiago a lot more enjoyable. We're going to take the grim out of the pilgrimage, put more bounce in your boots, more K's in your days. To that end, in this episode, you are in for a treat, fellow peregrinos, because we have an amazing lady. Cassie Childers Ryle is a Camino coach. She's an author, she's an activist, and she's also an educator, a former history teacher. But right now, you're going to hear about all things Camino. Cassie is a Camino coach. She focuses on planning the walk itself, the inner journey, and re-entry into normal everyday life. Cassie, it's an absolute honor and privilege to have you on the podcast.
I am totally thrilled to be here. Let's talk Camino.
Yes, the floor is yours, my fellow peregrina. So please take us back to the time and place where you first decided to walk the Camino de Santiago, and why.
Yeah, I think like many peregrinos, I decided to walk the Camino at a time of immense change in my life. I had just come out of working for 7 years for an NGO in India. And I was literally about a week out, and I had no direction in my life. I had no idea what I was going to do, what I wanted to do. I felt kind of nothing. I had just married my husband, and we were on a kind of mini honeymoon driving around Western Kerry in Ireland, where he's from, just kind of driving around from town to town. And we stopped in a pub to have a drink, and we go inside, and the pub is completely packed. We sit down at the bar, and we realize as we're sitting down, this is a funeral. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between just a packed bar and an Irish funeral. So we're sitting there at the bar, and we ask one of the geezers sitting near us, whose funeral is this? And he says, oh, it's Danny Sheehy's. You know him, right? And we said, no, we've never heard of him. And he tells us the story. Danny Sheehy was an older gentleman from this village way out in the far west of Ireland, who with a couple of his mates rowed a boat from Ireland to the start of basically the Camino Ingles in northern Spain. They rowed all the way across the ocean to Spain and made it to Santiago. So they did the pilgrimage by sea. After they finished that journey, they decided to keep on rowing all the way to Morocco. And somewhere off the coast of Portugal, the boat sank and Danny died. And we were at his funeral by chance. And there was something about this conversation that just absolutely inspired me, shocked me, saddened me. I had heard of the Camino de Santiago before. I had actually walked pieces of it by accident earlier. And as soon as I heard this, I just kind of looked at my husband, James, and I said, that's what I want to do. I want to walk the Camino. And we left a couple weeks later for our first Camino, and that was it.
Wow. So from that moment of bumping into these people at the Irish funeral, 2 weeks later, did you get on the boat as well?
No, we did not do it by boat.
I didn't know if there was a boat that maybe connected the points between Ireland and Spain, like a ferry or something like that. But you've obviously flown into Santiago and then walked from the... where's the starting point of the Camino Ingles?
That would be in a town called Ferrol on the northern coast of Spain. Okay. But we didn't do that Camino first. Right. First we walked, actually our first Camino was a little bit unconventional. We walked from Santiago to Finisterre for our first Camino. And then we went back about a year later and we did the entire Camino del Norte. And then a year after that, we did the Celtic Camino, which actually started in Ireland and made it all the way to Santiago.
So when you do the Celtic Camino, you start where in Ireland? Just so the listeners know, if anyone's intrigued to do that.
Yeah, it started actually right just steps from our front door where we were living in the town of Tralee.
Wow, I didn't even know that existed.
Church. Yeah, okay. And so it's about 100 kilometers in Ireland. And then traditionally, Irish pilgrims would get on a ship to take you to Ferrol. Right. But we flew, of course. And then it basically is the same route as the Camino Ingles once you're in Spain. So it's about 200 kilometers total.
Okay, so then you get started at Ferrol in Galicia after flying to Santiago. Fantastic. Wow, what a great story. So that one moment in that Irish pub just piqued your interest and you've never looked back.
Exactly.
And it sounds like all the points connected as well, because I read on your website you'd actually unknowingly walked different parts of different Caminos when you'd been traveling in Spain.
Absolutely true. Yeah, I went to Spain solo a few years before just for a trip, and I liked hiking, so I went on a few walks, and I noticed the yellow arrows. And this is way down on the Camino Mozarabe outside of Granada in southern Spain, very far from Santiago. And I realized I was following yellow arrows, and I had no idea at the time that it was the Camino, but it was. And then I went on a hike in a different area of Spain, in Cuenca. And again, I was following yellow arrows. And I just thought, oh, maybe that's a thing in Spain. They blaze trails with yellow arrows. And it wasn't until later that I realized, oh, I've been walking pieces of the Camino. This is so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing how all those points just connected for you. And you ended up actually walking a Camino for your honeymoon, right?
This is true. On our honeymoon, right after we decided to do our first Camino, we walked the Camino Finisterre. Yeah.
Okay, and so much, you love the Camino so much, you and your husband, that you actually named your baby and took your baby on a Camino as well, right?
This is true.
What a story.
Yeah. I actually got pregnant on the Camino del Norte.
Just to let you know, Cassie, that's my plan as well. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, be careful, because I think there's like a very potent, thing going on with all the ley lines and the Celtic stones. That there's something happening on the Camino routes that makes you very potent.
Like I said, when I read your story, I mean, my wife's in bed right now, so maybe she's not listening. I'm not sure, but I said I felt like I'd found my Camino twin, because I've been saying to my wife, let's name if it's a boy, we're going to call it Tiago after Santiago. And she's like, we're going to call it Jack or something like that, something more traditionally English. And I'm always kind of trying to lead her down the road of something like, I don't know, more exotic, like Keone, which is like a Hawaiian name, and she's like, no, we're going to call it Albert or whatever. But yeah, it's so great to read your story, because it's like you've done everything that kind of I'm secretly planning to do. But anyway, hopefully she's not hearing that. So you're on your honeymoon on the Camino. You're also your Santiago was conceived on the Camino, which is amazing. I love this story, and as you can hear, I've probably had a bit too much coffee this morning. But anyway, so Cassie, let's dive into some of the practicalities of the Camino, because you are a Camino coach by trade and author, which we'll talk about more about your book towards the end of the podcast. But let's talk about how someone can get into shape for the Camino. I know on your website you give a 6-week training plan. Now we're going to put a link to that on our Facebook page as well, Camino de Santiago Pilgrims podcast. But can you please give an overview of how someone can get into shape for walking the Camino? In your own words, couch to Camino.
Sure. So first of all, my husband and I, we didn't train at all for our first Camino, and we really felt the effects of that. We were limping for weeks afterwards. It was terrible. We didn't even think about it. And we learned on subsequent Caminos that it's very important to prepare yourself to some degree. And I think the biggest mistake we made was we did a big long hike one day back home. You know, we walked 20 kilometers and we said, oh, that wasn't so bad. We can do that. No problem. And what we didn't realize is that compounded 20 kilometers day after day after day after day, that's something totally different. After a few days, your body kind of goes, what is going on here? And that's the thing that you want to kind of coax your body into realizing is going to happen before you start your Camino. So the way to do that is to just be consistent and go for a long walk every day for at least 6 weeks before. You don't have to go on a 20-kilometer walk every day, but you should go for a significant walk every day based on your current fitness level. Couch the Camino plan that I designed can be kind of adjusted based on how far you're going to walk each day and what your needs are. But you basically want to start at least 6 weeks out, probably more, with your same shoes, with lots of stretching or yoga or something like that. And core strength is particularly important. But I mean, that being said, still, I think it's very, very important that when you do start the Camino, you start the first few days in gradual increments. When we did our second Camino, we had learned our lesson. On our first day, we only walked 8 kilometers. Second day, 15 kilometers. And we did a few more days of about 15. And only after about a week, we started building back up to 20s and 25s. And that worked perfectly for us. We didn't feel it at all.
So 6 weeks, ideally, if you got more, but at least 6 weeks before. You want to be consistent. You want to do a long walk every day. What would you define as a long walk?
Well, if you're like going to shoot for about 20 to 25 kilometers a day on the Camino, which is about the average I think most people do, you probably want to try to do about 10 to 15, 5 to 6 days a week while you're.
If you can.
And then if you can. And then just try to throw in maybe a longer one once a week.
Yeah, if you can, do a longer one each week as well. Like you say, maybe if you can only do that long walk once a week, then make sure you get that in. Would you recommend doing that with a weighted pack like you're going to carry on the Camino?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. Maybe not the first week you're training, do it without a pack. And then maybe just do it with your empty pack for a week and then add more and more weight to your pack. Because your shoulders will hurt too. And there's a thing called shoulder blisters. That's a real thing where you're just not used to carrying this pack all day.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I remember on my last Camino that everything felt great, but I did have a bit of chafing around the armpit area from my backpack, and my backpack is pretty much brand new, so surprised. Well, it was brand new actually, so surprised that I got that. You recommended lots of stretching and yoga. Could you be a bit more technical on that? Would you have lots of how long would you stretch for how many seconds before and after? Because I've heard of kind of preparational stretching and developmental stretching for afterwards. Technically, is there something that you can add there?
Well, I think this was a big thing for me, growing up as I was a soccer player my whole life. We always were taught to stretch, before you start playing, before you start warming up. And that is completely out the window now. And I think a lot of peregrinos might not know that. You really shouldn't stretch until you've already warmed up. Yeah. So if you're doing a long walk for about an hour and then stop and stretch in the middle. Hold your stretches nice and long. They shouldn't hurt though. Stretch while your body's already warm. That's when you're going to get the most benefit. If you stretch when you're cold, you could actually be doing harm.
And after they've finished walking, how long should they stretch for each muscle?
It depends on the person, but probably hold a stretch for each muscle about 10 seconds.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so stretching 10 seconds when you're done, and obviously when you've done an hour of walking, maybe you can stop and limber up with a few stretches there. Thank you very much, Cassie. Brilliant stuff. Mm-hmm. And like you said, when you actually get on the Camino, and this is advice that we've echoed a few times as well, is if you do have the luxury of time, gradually build up those daily distances. So like you said, you started with an 8 and then went on to a 10 and then 15s and 20s, and if you do have the luxury of time, that is the ideal way to get in shape. Brilliant stuff, Cassie. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to, because I know you are a fountain of Camino wisdom and knowledge here. That's talking about adjusting your body. What about adjusting psychologically to albergue life? Any recommendations for that?
This is one of the biggest challenges for most people that they don't even think about is you're going to be living communally for maybe a month or more, and you really won't have much personal space. People are going to be talking to you before you even get to take your morning pee. It's going to be very uncomfortable. And so it's best to just kind of throw your expectations out the window, say, this is temporary. I'm just going to see what happens, and keep it as open mind as possible.
Yeah, and that's all part of the character building and the experience. What about getting some good sleep? Any recommendations on that? How did you and your husband adjust?
Well, I mean, you need the basic supplies like a mask, because people turn the lights on in the dorm room in the middle of the night for no reason. It's so ridiculous. So you definitely need an eye mask, earplugs for sure. And then me, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not telling anybody to do this. Talk to your doctor. But there is a pill that's sold in America called Benadryl. It's basically an antihistamine, and I usually pop those every night, and they put me right to sleep. They don't work on my husband, but they work for me.
Okay. So
and then, I would say drink that last glass of wine. That'll knock you out too.
That's actually a really, really good idea as well, and no one's ever said that before, so you're a Camino expert, Cassie. Thanks a lot. So you talked about adjusting psychologically to the albergues, your body to the long distance walking every day. A quick overview of blisters. You've got a section of that on your website. Any carry-outs for the listeners?
Yes, I learned the hard way. Your shoes absolutely must be a larger size than is normal. You can seriously damage your feet. Your feet will swell more than on a hike at home day after day. Your feet just get way bigger. You need to go a size up. This is a big thing. Also, socks. I'm kind of a cheapskate. I would never in my life pay $20 for a pair of socks. But for the Camino, I learned the hard way again that you really need great socks.
Any specific brand you can recommend?
The Smart Wool are the ones that I'm using right now. They're really good. Darn Tough is really good as well. They need to be a very high percentage of wool. And don't buy the cheap ones. We bought some kind of cheap ones online, and they had holes in them halfway through the Camino del Norte, and we had to buy new ones. So it's better to just get good ones. And then my biggest tip is to get something called Engo patches. These are a little bit obscure. You can't find them in a shop anywhere in Europe, as far as I know. You have to order them online from America. They're made out of some kind of space age patented material that creates zero friction. So it doesn't stick to your foot, it sticks to the inside of your shoe. And so after, you're walking for a few days, if you feel a hot spot on your foot where maybe a blister would be likely to develop, you put that patch on the inside of your shoe against that spot, and it completely prevents a blister from forming. They're a little bit expensive, but they lasted me the entire Camino. I didn't have to replace them once. So
Would
it's
you
really
mind just
worth
spelling those out again, please?
ENGO, Engo patches.
Engo patches. I'll put a link to that product and our Camino de Santiago Facebook page, El Camino de Santiago Pilgrims podcast. Never heard that before. Thank you very much for that, Cassie. So, like you said, make sure your shoes are more or less a size up because they will swell from the heat and all the walking. You want smart wool or darn tough socks. You could try those. You recommended those. And those Engo patches to whack straight on those hot spots if you do feel any. So that's a way to walk blister free. So talking of, we've already mentioned albergs. Is there an alberg that you could recommend along the Camino, any of the 3 Caminos you've walked, the Camino Ingles, the Camino Finisterre, or the Camino del Norte?
Definitely. My favorite albergue of all time is called Casa Bella. It's in a very small hamlet called Villa in Galicia. It's on the Camino Finisterre. And it just was magic. An old stone farmhouse. And it's run by a little grandmother. She doesn't speak a word of English. She stands out front all afternoon. And every pilgrim that walks up, she just hugs and kisses. And it's so genuine. She's so happy to see you. She's greeting you like she's your own grandmother. And even though I wasn't able to converse with her, I was able to communicate so much with her because of her warmth and what was coming through her eyes. And she cooks dinner for everybody. It's just an incredible place.
93% of communication is non-verbal. So there you go.
Exactly.
It's all that warm, lovely body language, and has so much information and good energy is conveyed in a smile, isn't it? And you often get that from the locals all along the Camino, and she sounds like she embodies everything that's good about the Camino. So it's Casa Bella. Is that B-E-A?
It's V-E-L-L-A.
V-E-L-L-A. Casa Bella. Okay, right, excellent. So I'll put a link to that on our Facebook page as well. Thanks, Cassie. And let's talk now about the top 3 things that would be at the top of your packing list, aside from the obvious, like a backpack, shoes and socks.
Yeah, I'll avoid the obvious answers for the sake of entertainment, but I already told you about the Engo patches.
Yeah.
I would also bring naproxen, which is a anti-inflammatory that's safe to take every day. It'll do a lot to keep you feeling limber. And also Tabasco sauce. I usually travel with my own condiments. I like things spicy, and I bring a bottle of Tabasco sauce to pour all over everything on the Camino. But I mean, those are kind of my funny answers, but I think the truly most important thing that any pilgrim could pack is their pain. Whatever it is, whatever life has thrown at you, we all have some kind of pain that we're carrying with us. And you need to bring it with you, and you need to wear it like a badge tied to your pack, just like your scallop shell. We tend to stuff things deep down inside, but on the Camino, it's better to try to coax it out and see how your awareness of it manifests as you walk, because a special kind of alchemy happens when you walk that far for that long, day after day after day. And negative emotions and memories, they have a way of being rattled free from the recesses of your mind and body, and you'll you'll have this ability to process them and release them in a new way that maybe you never have before. And the Camino is a long, slow walk, but I actually think it's the fastest way to get to where you want to be psychologically and spiritually speaking. So bring whatever it is that you want to work on deep inside, and the rest is up to the Camino.
I read on your website that you were walking because you were trying to work something out. Was there something, do you mind divulging the details of that, or is it something?
Absolutely not. I would be happy to talk about it.
Yeah, please do. This is all about you, Cassie.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I was running an NGO in India in the Tibetan refugee community for 7 years. And it was one of those jobs that, it was my baby. It was everything. And my entire sense of self was built up around this job I had. And when it suddenly ended, and it was kind of out of my control, I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know how to feel good about myself, or how to even begin to come to terms with everything I had experienced there, which was all very intense. And I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do next in life. I was very depressed, to be honest. And so I worked on it a bit before we did that second Camino. I was getting some therapy. I was doing a lot of spiritual work. And when we took our first steps on the Camino del Norte, that was my intention, was to somehow come out of this depression, figure out what was going on and where I wanted to be next. And all I can say is it worked. And
what did you find that solution was?
Well, the main thing was, like, I felt like I had no purpose in life, and, like, basically my life was over. I'd already experienced everything I could have possibly experienced in this life. That was the feeling when I started. And then by the end, I found out I was pregnant, and then life took on a whole new meaning. And I had basically walked the entire Camino del Norte pregnant, and I didn't know it.
Well, you certainly found your new purpose and meaning there, didn't you?
Exactly.
Most definitely.
And there were a lot of days out there on the trail that it was really hard. I wanted to quit. A lot of days my anger came out, all this kind of suppressed anger. I would just turn red, and I'd be sweating, and, just have to walk by myself for a few hours to just kind of pound this anger out of my body. And day after day after day, I woke up one morning and I realized it's gone. I'm not angry anymore. And then my life opened up in a totally new direction.
It sounds like you definitely found your meaning and purpose there, Cassie. And obviously you talked about the Camino del Norte, and you said you wanted to focus a little bit more on that one. Could you recommend a favourite city, town or village along all three, or just one of the Caminos that you've walked?
San Sebastian is an incredible city. It's in the Basque Country, just one day in to the Camino del Norte. And because it was so early on the route, we didn't stop for a rest day, but this is a place that's really worth stopping. It's just the most amazing Spanish city, as far as I'm concerned, with the greatest cuisine, tapas culture. Yeah. It's just a really cool place.
I've heard great things about San Sebastian as well, and I've heard amazing things about the Camino del Norte as well. We had a guest on a few episodes ago, Mark Stevens, and he said the scenery is absolutely breathtaking.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous there.
Yeah, I think that is going to be the next one that my wife and I walk. We've just got married, and we did a kind of little mini moon on the Camino Portuguese, but we've got our eyes on the Camino del Norte this year, so we're just working out when we can go and do it. But and especially after talking to you and Mark, I'm like, yeah, that's gonna be done sometime soon. So now we're going to move into some quick fire questions, Cassie. So just some short, sweet answers. And the first one is your favorite Camino blog, vlog, or book?
It's called Camino Voyage. It's a documentary about Danny Sheehy and his friends, the guys who rode from Ireland to Spain.
And what's the name of your book going to be called?
Our book is called The Camino Provides, A Curious Guide to the Camino del Norte.
And that's going to be released when?
Probably within a couple of months.
Is there a pre-order link that I can put on the Facebook page, or is it still a work in progress?
Not yet. It's still in with the editor right now.
Okay, well, as soon as you've got that pre-order or anything, please do let us know, and I'll definitely promote that to our listeners.
Great.
Favorite food and or drink on the Camino?
The Gatorade of the Camino, the ultimate sports drink, vino blanco mixed with agua con gas.
That's got a name, isn't it? Is that Claro or something like that?
I don't know if it has a name, but we just sit down, we order vino blanco, we order agua con gas, and we mix it up ourselves.
I saw people doing that, and I didn't know what it was. And I saw quite a few people drinking that, and I didn't tend to drink much alcohol on the Camino, and that's obviously a personal choice. But I wonder if that's got a name. I'm going to research that. So vino tinto, right? Red wine and agua con gas.
Vino blanco for us.
Vino blanco. Okay, vino blanco.
We find it more refreshing,
Yeah.
And then mixed with the water, it kind of hydrates you a bit too. So.
Yeah, there you go. Best of both worlds.
Yeah.
One thing you didn't need and wouldn't take again.
A lot of people probably aren't going to like this answer, but a baseball cap. I thought I was going to wear it every day, but I never wore it even once.
One place you wished you'd stayed over.
San Sebastian.
You missed it. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were there for just, one night, but we wish we stayed another day.
Okay, an important word or phrase in Spanish that'll get you out of trouble.
Okay, so a lot of times pilgrims finish their walk and they want to have a big meal, but restaurants in Spain don't serve food all day most of the time. So when you walk into the restaurant, you have to say, para comer, which means, are you serving food, basically? Can I eat? And that will let you know whether you can eat or not.
Yeah, and in actual fact, on our last Camino, we made that mistake a few times. We turned up looking for a pilgrim menu around about 5 o'clock, 4:30, and they're like, sorry, the kitchen's closed. So if you do want that pilgrim menu and that afternoon meal, definitely go between 1:30 and probably 3:30. Some might go until 4, but great advice there. Para comer, which is, can we eat, pretty much?
Yep.
Okay. Now, is there a mistake you made on the Camino that you would recommend your fellow peregrinos don't make?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if there are mistakes on the Camino. I mean, everything kind of happens for a reason, I believe, and whatever challenge comes your way, this is part of your journey to overcome it. So I don't know if there's mistakes. If anything, I would say bringing the wrong pair of shoes. No.
So make sure you get your shoes right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest mistakes I've made on the Camino, and you alluded to it at the start of the episode, and that was doing too much too soon and just building up those daily distances little by little. Yeah. And if you could, Cassie, since you're a 3-time pilgrim, could you describe your daily routine from waking up to going to bed? How do you get through the day?
So I am literally the last person to get up in the entire albergue usually. I don't like talking to people or looking at people in the eyes before I've had breakfast. So the way I deal with that is I just stay in bed with my mask on until they've all left. And I get up and I usually skip the albergue breakfast because it's usually just like very simple carbohydrates, cake or something. And I found that this really doesn't do me any good for the rest of the day if I start my day with sugar. So we'll usually walk about an hour or so until we hit a bar. And usually bars have Spanish tortilla available all day long, which is a kind of omelet filled with potato and onions, and that is a great breakfast. So we usually stop about an hour in, have some cafe con leche and tortilla, and then blast straight through without stopping for the rest of the day. Even though I'm usually the last to get up, I'm usually the first to get to the next place because we don't take another rest. So we get in while the restaurants are usually still open for lunch, have a huge lunch, and then spend a couple hours writing, because we're usually writing when we're on the Camino. Spend a couple hours writing, then have a shower and rest a bit, and then back out in the evenings to have some fun and commune with our fellow peregrinos.
And is there a certain time that you have as a ritual that you would clean clothes?
Yeah, usually as soon as we check into an albergue, we'll wash our stuff. Yep.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's a great advice as well, because in the last episode we had Mark Hansen, a guy from Illinois, Springfield, Illinois, and he recommended that make sure as soon as you get into the albergue, clean your clothes, hang them up, and then take them off the line before it gets dark, because they can get wet from moist from the dew overnight. So yeah, you've echoed that advice as well there. Now, talking money, how did you manage money along the Camino? And what if someone is on a budget, what would you say is the minimum they need per day?
I know a lot of pilgrims are concerned about managing money. We didn't find this a big challenge, as far as actual implements. Carry a bit of cash. You'll find ATMs every few days. And then cards were widely accepted on our Caminos. So we use the card a lot. As far as budget, I would say realistically, you need 30 euros a day. Some people do it for less, but it's not going to be a comfortable thing for you to do it for less. You want to have a little wiggle room to maybe stay in some nicer places, go out to a big meal with other pilgrims. And then in some places you'll spend more, especially in the Norte. Some places are more expensive because they're also seaside resort towns. And you just don't want to have to be worrying about money. So I think to be safe, 30 euros a day.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because it depends on what kind of Camino you want to walk. If you want to stay in albergues more often than not, then the most basic ones, the council ones, as we'd say in England, or the municipal ones, they're kind of climbing up to around about 10 euros now, aren't they? Many of them.
Yeah.
And then you're going to need, so that's leaving 20 euros per day to get your food, which is way more than you need to spend on food per day, especially if you're going to procure food from supermarkets. But like you say, sometimes that money you save on one day could go on to the next day, and you could treat yourself to a private room if you feel like you need to sleep, or that little bit of privacy. So it does give you a bit of flexibility and choice along the way, I think. So
That's right.
I think that's a really, really good minimum budget of 30 euros per day. Thanks for that, Cassie. Could you recall a funny, inspiring, or quirky Camino encounter? A memory that embodies everything that's good about the Camino. I know you mentioned the lady at Casabea. Anything else spring to mind?
Yeah. On my 3 Caminos, there were a few times that I kind of daydreamed about quitting and just going off somewhere else. But there was one time that I was very seriously considering quitting. It was on the Camino del Norte, about halfway through, and I had horrible bug bites, bed bug bites, all over my body. Awful. Huge welts, hives just covering me. It was terrible. And on top of that, I was just feeling exhausted. FYI, I was pregnant and didn't know it. Exhausted, covered with bed bug bites. And I just wasn't feeling like anything was happening for me on the Camino. I was still in this depression. I was like, there's nothing for me here. Everybody else is having these amazing experiences and there's nothing happening for me. And I was laying there in my bed thinking, I think I'm going to tell James, my husband, that I want to quit. I can't go on like this. And so I went downstairs to the lobby of the albergue, and I was ordering an orange juice from the bar, and a Very small, little, elderly Spanish gentleman walks up to me and he starts talking to me in Spanish. My Spanish is not very good, and I wasn't really sure what he was talking about. But he was getting all excited, and he shows me a newspaper article written in Spanish with his picture on it. And I'm kind of looking at it like, he's some kind of a pilgrim. Okay, great. And I didn't really know what the article said. And then the bartender comes up to me and he says, "Do you know who this is?" And I said, "I have no idea who this is." He says, "It's Jose Fonso Garcia Calvo." And I said, "I don't know who this man is. I've never heard of him." So the bartender takes out his smartphone and he finds an article written in English about this man, and he lets me read it. This guy, Jose, who I'm standing there next to, was world famous for having walked 103,000 kilometers on pilgrimage. He was a fisherman, and in his youth, and the ship sunk, his fishing boat sunk, and every single person on the boat died except for him. He treaded water for 3 days before he was rescued. And while he was treading water, he promised God, "If I survive this, I'm going to devote my life to God." And so he survived. And when he got home, he sold everything he owned, and he decided to go on the Camino and walk to Santiago. This is decades ago. And once he got to Santiago, he said, "I'm going to keep going." And he just kept walking. And he walked all the way across Europe, into Tibet, across the Himalayas into India, all the way through East Asia, up to Siberia. He somehow got across to Alaska and then walked all the way down the length of North and South America, made his way back to Europe, 103,000 kilometers. And he basically devoted his life to the Camino. Now he's too old to walk, and he lives at this albergue and just sits out front all day, smoking his cigarettes and drinking his coffee and shouting "Buen Camino" to every pilgrim that passes. And so here on this day that I was going to quit, he comes up to me and tries to tell me his story. And I just, tears are coming to my eyes right now. I just knew, like, this is a sign. I cannot quit. If this guy can walk around the entire world on pilgrimage, then I can certainly do this. So I went back up to the room and I said to James, "Let's keep going." And that was it.
Firstly, thanks for that amazing story. And I just, if you wouldn't mind, Cassie, the audio just dropped out when you said the guy's name. Can you repeat the guy's name, please?
Sure. Jose Fonso Garcia Calvo.
Jose Fonso Garcia Calvo.
Yes.
Okay, I am going to put a link. I'm going to do some research and put a link to some info on that great man on our Facebook page. And secondly, we've heard stories similar to this before on the Camino about people having Camino angels. It sounds like he was your Camino angel, your savior, your inspiration to keep going. And like the name of your book, The Camino Provides. It sounds like the Camino provided you with exactly the right person when you needed it.
Exactly. That's when I knew that the Camino had something for me, and I had to keep.
I'm just beaming, just listening to this story and going through it with you. And the other thing is, I need to know the name of the albergue so people can go there.
Oh, sure. It's called Monte y Mar, and it's in a town called La Isla.
And that is La Isla, as in like it's
ISLA.
Okay, La Isla. Okay, so I'll put a link to that on our Facebook page as well, so people know to go there and meet Jose Fonso Garcia Calvo. Yep. Thanks for that amazing story. Now, one of the hardest things, Cassie, about doing the Camino is going back to everyday life. On your website, you say this is part of your training, actually, as a Camino coach. So could you give any advice on how to make that transition as smooth as possible?
Lower your expectations. The people that you are closest to may show very little interest in what you've just done. And that's something that most people don't realize until it's happening. You've just undergone this intense period of personal growth very quickly. Meanwhile, back home, all your loved ones have kind of stayed at the same rate they've always been at as far as personal development, which is usually kind of slow. They're going to seem the same, and you're going to be feeling very different. And even though they have good intentions, and I'm sure everybody will be very happy to see you and very polite, as soon as you try to get into the nitty-gritty of your Camino storytelling, you might kind of sense that energetically they're checked out. And I think it's because they can't possibly relate to what you've just gone through unless they've gone through it themselves. So lower your expectations. Don't expect to be telling stories back home that everybody's captivated by. What I would say is instead, stay in touch with people you met on your Camino. Reach out to them. Continue your journey through that community. Reach out on the online forums. There are so many wonderful online forums and Facebook groups of pilgrims from all over the world where you can tell your stories and continue your journey that way.
What you said about lowering your expectations, not only in how other people will react to your Camino stories, but also in, I think, how other people are going to be in everyday life, because on the Camino, everyone you meet is so full of energy and joy. You know, the word in Spanish, alegría, you know, it's just there in abundance. And you come home bouncing with all this joy, and it's not mirrored in other people. And I found that to be really bloody hard.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like some golden age, the Camino. Everyone was generous. Everybody was nice. Everyone was welcoming. And then you go home and, I don't know, you're back on the tube train in London, and it seems like misery is all around you. So in that way, just know that life isn't always going to be like that on you in your post Camino life, but you can put the color where is the black and white as a pilgrim. You can find that color if you look for it, and you will find that color, like you say, in connecting with people you met along the way, and connecting with people online, and living maybe vicariously through people that are still walking the Camino and on the Camino. So thanks for that advice, Cassie. It's really good stuff. And where can the listeners follow you online, Cassie, and find out about how they can potentially work with you as you being their Camino coach?
My website is caminocoaching.org. You can connect with me there anytime. I also have a Facebook page called Camino Coaching. And our book is coming out in a few months. It's called The Camino Provides, A Curious Guide to the Camino del Norte.
Please send me a link to that. I'll put it on our Facebook page, and I'm going to buy it as well, because it's been amazing talking to you. And like I said, I'll put a link to all of that stuff on our Facebook page. Now, Cassie, I would like it, if you don't mind, that you could now take on the role of co-host, because we've got a few questions, 5 questions from fellow pilgrims on our Facebook page. So the first one, especially since you're living in Spain now, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
What's the tipping custom in Spain? Do you think it's not like America, is it? You're not actually expected to leave 10% as you are in America.
Yeah, in America, it's really 20%.
Oh, okay.
So it's very significant. But yeah, in Spain, no tip is expected at all, really. But the nice thing to do is, if your bill is, €9, leave the extra euro and make it 10, or whatever kind of loose change comes along, leave a bit of it. Yeah, something like that. And then bartenders really don't expect any tip at all. And some of them, I think, are even offended by it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the staff are normally on a good standard wage anyway, so it's not expected. And I did double check this with a friend of mine from Madrid. I mean, I live in Spanish territory as well. I live in Tenerife, and what we tend to do here as Brits, because us Brits tend to tip more than the Spanish, is we do exactly the same as what you just said. We'll have, if the bill's like 9.20, we'll leave 11 or we'll leave 10 or something like that. We'll round it up. We'll always try and put it up to the next euro. If it's 9.80, we'll leave 11 or 12, something like that. But it's not expected. And that question was from Laurie Mayfield de Laxe. I hope I've said that right. I probably haven't, but thanks for helping us answer that. The next question, Cassie, this is from Nada Durdabas, Nada Durdabas. Do the majority of albergues have dryers?
No, the majority of them do not. So you'll have to hang your stuff out to line dry. So if it's raining, which it often is on the Camino del Norte, you might have a challenge with getting dry stuff. If you're staying in a little bit more of a town of significant size, there's usually laundromats. And sometimes we definitely had to use laundromats in order to get stuff dry fast.
Yeah, and sometimes they do have an indoor drying area as well if it's raining. But the tumble dryers aren't always there. In some, you will find them, but they're not in the majority of them. So you do have to hang your clothes out. Thomas McKenzie says, and he's from the US, the best airport to fly to or from in the United States. I mean, this is quite a difficult question to ask, but I'm guessing, Cassie, you want somewhere that's got lots of flights out of, like New York or Los Angeles, where it's got an international hub, and you would fly to Madrid or Barcelona because that's the easiest way to get to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. What do you think?
Definitely. I mean, the big hubs. The cheapest airport in New York to fly out of generally is JFK. And there's some really great deals these days on transatlantic flights. Through TAP Airlines, which would route you through Lisbon, or through Norwegian, which would route you through Barcelona. So it's actually, oftentimes cheaper to fly from New York to Europe than it is to fly from New York to California these days.
Yeah, and it's probably just getting to Madrid or Barcelona if you're going to the starting point at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. If you're going to Barcelona, you can probably get a bus to Pamplona and then get a bus to Saint-Jean from there. Or if you're flying to Madrid, you could get a train from Madrid to Pamplona, or I think you can even fly from Madrid to Pamplona and then get a bus from there to Saint-Jean. So I hope that answers your question, Thomas. The other question was, this is from Rick Prater. Do you have to book early to stay in Orison? Do you know where Orison is? The first is kind of halfway up the first incline on the Camino Frances.
Oh, right. I haven't been there, so I don't know. But this is a good place to stop. I do recommend stopping there so you don't kill yourself on the first day. Yeah,
on the first day. And that again agrees with your advice to build your daily distances up little by little. And I think it also kind of ties in and overlaps with a question that many pilgrims have, is that do we have to book in advance? I see this question asked so much. It's first come, first served, isn't it, more often than not?
At the majority of the albergues, you do not need to book. I would say, though, I'm particularly knowledgeable about the Camino del Norte. This is a little bit of a different situation because it does go through these major beach towns. So if you're walking in July and August, you need to think ahead about booking because of Spanish holidaymakers, not really other pilgrims. So there's a little bit of a concern in July and August, but other than that, you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, so the moral of the story is you don't have to book in most places if you're going to do the Camino del Norte. However, in summer, then it might be an idea to book in advance to make sure you get that. And in regards to Orison, from what I've read and seen on the website and from speaking to other pilgrims, it's pretty much first come, first served. So get in there while you can. And the other question was, I don't know if you know the answer to this one, Cassie, and that was, there's 2 pilgrim masses per day in Santiago. There's one at 7:15 and one at noon. And the names of the pilgrims are, it says on the website, read out at 12 o'clock. Do you know if they're read out at 7:15 as well?
I have no idea about this.
Okay, well, I know for a fact that it says on the website it's read out at noon. So if you do want to hear your name read out and you don't want to miss that, then you're probably safer to just attend the noon mass. just to make sure you don't miss it. And what's the name of your favorite Camino guidebook from Thomas Mackenzie?
To tell you the truth, I've never read a Camino guidebook.
Yours is going to be a Camino guidebook, though, isn't it? So
yes, so my own, yes.
So,
Camino Provides.
And if anyone's listening, it would definitely be John Briley's Camino guidebooks are absolutely amazing. So look those up. I'm sure most of you know about those already. Just before we finish, Cassie, could you imagine that you were talking to someone who's not sure about walking the Camino? They're 50-50. What would you say to convince them?
It's the last great adventure on earth that is still reasonably accessible to the average person. So do it. If you approach it with clear intentions, it's worth years of therapy or spiritual work. Shock your system and find a totally new perspective to life. Just get there and do it.
Cassie Childers Ryle, thank you so much for your time this morning. Buen camino, fellow peregrina.
Buen camino.
Wanderer, a life adventurer, said he's a secrets philosopher. He's a wandering wanderer.